All right. Hopefully this time we've got some of the audio issues sorted out. We'll find out soon enough. I'd like to go over to this subject with the family and some friends. A few people actually watch this. How does the Trump election relate to Bible prophecy? Okay. As for what I'm looking at now in the news and what we're seeing with Trump and everything, I can see a clear path to biblical events, especially the Battle of Gog and Magog. Really quickly before I really get going here, this I preached this on Sunday morning, this last Sunday morning. So I prepared this slideshow for the folks in Mongolia, and I put everything on the screen so that while I'm talking, they can if they don't understand something I'm saying, because I am a foreigner, if they don't understand something I'm saying, then they can see the main points on the screen. They can read that, and so I'll kind of some of these I'll read, some of these I'll just kind of talk through, and we'll go from there. You'll kind of get the idea as we go. If you saw the previous one on the prophecy main stage being set for the prophecy, then you understand what's going on. All right, so let's get started. First thing I want to establish here really quickly is that God absolutely works in history. We put a big emphasis on human free will, and we should. I think human free will is a huge gift, probably the most important gift that God has given us. But that doesn't mean that God somehow steps back and is just kind of sitting back and watching things unfold. He is directly involved in history, and he's directly involved in getting his plan into play. One second, I need to stop this really quickly. Okay. All right. So, what was I saying? Sorry, I'm doing this with family and kids running around, so there's going to be interruptions, just the way it is. All right. So, anyways, God is absolutely involved with history, and we can see this in Scripture. Oops, let me see here. Okay. Romans 13:1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there's no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. This is pretty obvious. Some people say, oh, this is talking about the angelic realm and that kind of thing. No, because later on, if you go on reading in this passage, it talks that they don't carry the sword in vain. In other words, they have the ability to do capital punishment, which that doesn't happen in the angelic realm. Daniel 2:21, and he changes God, and he changes the times and the seasons. He removeth kings, and he setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He removes kings, and he sets up kings. And now, obviously, kings is an old, that's what they understood back then, but now we understand as rulers, obviously. Jeremiah 27:5, ignore the 6. I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and have given it unto whom it seemed meet unto me. Now, there's a number of verses like this. If we read them all, I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. The main point is God is absolutely in charge of human history. He brings up kings, he takes down kings. We saw that with Nebuchadnezzar. In the Bible, there's examples of this. So God, I believe that God is today, I'm going to say it in Mongolian, is directly involved in history, and I believe that he was involved with Donald Trump being elected president. Really quickly before we go there, though, I want to, if God's plan will work out in the end, then do we have free will, or is everything planned and we can change nothing? Okay, so how do we understand, the big question is, how do we understand God's sovereignty over history and his plan going to work out, and at the same time we have human free will? How can you reconcile those two things? We do have free will, obviously. If we didn't have free will, there wouldn't be true love. There wouldn't even be sin, because sin is a choosing freely to do this or not to do this, that God, against God's word, in short. God works in and around free will to bring about his plans. Let me give you an illustration. You guys all know this, don't you? This is Cedar Point, Kings Island. When I was a kid, we'd go there and we'd drive these cars as kids. And basically, if you got the rail here, I'll give you this. Mongolians don't have this here, so I had to give them an illustration of what was going on. But you can see, okay, you can drive this way a little bit, you can drive that way a little bit, but in the end, you're going to end up going where this track goes to. One second, and another interruption. Sorry. Okay, here we go. One more time. Sorry, it's just going to be interruptions throughout this. This is why I'm not putting this publicly up on YouTube. This is just for family and friends who are, I hope, more forgiving. All right, so what we're talking about. So this, I see this as signifying human free will and then also God's sovereign will. This rail is God's sovereign will, him working throughout history. And so humans can move this way and that way, but eventually we're like this car, you're going to go where we're going to go where God has planned. Now, individually, we do have a little bit more freedom, I think, but we can we're free to reject God's will in our lives, or we're free to reject the gospel, or we're free to, you know, we're free to go to heaven, or we're free to keep going on our path, which is going to hell. That's another subject altogether, so I'm not going to go there. But you get the main idea. Okay, so how does this relate to the recent USA elections? Okay, I believe God. I truly believe that God put Donald Trump into power in the United States at this time. I honestly believe he actually put Biden there as well. That's a kind of controversial issue, but if I go into all that, I did a post on that, but if I go into that, I think God raised up Trump in 2016. He allowed the humans to go in and steal the election, I believe, in 2000. What was it? 2008? I forget, 18 or whatever it was. 2020. Sorry, my brain's not working today. And then now I believe he allowed Trump. He kept them from their machinations. I'm not sure how you say that word, and allowed Trump. Like I said, it was too big to rig. So he allowed Trump to get in. And I believe God saved, and Donald Trump believes this as well. God saved Donald Trump's life. Now, you guys all know this. I put this up for the Mongolians because they haven't seen this, but you guys seen how close. If he hadn't turned his head right at that moment, he'd be dead, and we'd be having a completely different election. Who knows what would have happened? So I believe God did actually save Trump's life, and he did put Donald Trump in there. Some people love Donald Trump. Some people hate him. I'm kind of I like him for a stance on Israel and other things. I don't put my trust or hope in any human, especially in any human politician. I think we're going to see a time of peace coming here, which I'll talk about in a second. I think he's going to be good for the world and for the country and for Bible prophecy specifically. But honestly, I do not put any hope in any person. I put my hope in Lord Jesus Christ and in God's word. Psalm 118:8-9 says, "It is better to trust in the Lord to put confidence in man." What more do you need to say? It's better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes and rulers, in other words. I mean, this is, I read this, I don't know, about a week ago or so ago when I was in my morning reading. I thought, yeah, this is absolutely true. Okay, so love Trump, hate him. That doesn't matter in this instance. What I'm looking at is how does Trump relate to Bible prophecy? Okay. There are many reasons why, and again, this is from Mongolians, that Trump may have brought God into power. Maybe, well, I mean, again, I don't have to explain this all that much to Americans. You know what the craziness that was going on in America. I mean, if I go into the list, we'll be here all day. And there was a lot of people praying, for Donald Trump, and maybe God heard their prayers and said, okay, we're going to at least back off this craziness for a while and kind of right the plane for a while. Maybe this has to do with the Great Commission, the missions. Maybe having Trump as the president will somehow further the gospel around the world. A prosperous America means that there will be more missions around the world spreading the gospel. Most mission work is coming out of America, and that's been the case for probably the last 150 years now, probably since the late 1800s, early 1900s. Generally speaking, if there's missionaries in a place, there's 3 or 4 American missionaries and 1 or 2 of German, Norwegian, that kind of thing. So maybe this is God before the end times. If we are indeed in the end times, as I believe we are, maybe God is allowing this time of prosperity, Lord willing, in America, and that's allowing missions to go out further into the world and giving people another chance to repent and turn to Him and accept the gospel before all these end times events begin. I could go down that road quite a bit. I mean, there's going to be people being saved in the tribulation, especially in Israel. You're going to have the 144,000 Israeli what do you call them? Witnesses, I think is the Bible term, going out in all the world, and maybe we're laying the foundation for that going on now. And maybe there's people in Israel hearing the gospel now that aren't accepting it, but will accept it in the future, as we'll talk about in a little bit. So that may be a reason. My belief is that Trump will bring a time of peace to the world, and especially to Israel. And this is directly related to the end time events in Bible prophecy. And this is what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully in short. Okay. Get a drink of coffee there. Okay. There's a lot of stuff going around the world. I talked about this in a previous post. I did a 2-hour video on all the things that are happening in the world that are setting up the stage for the end times. I'm not going to go through all that today. But I want to reiterate here in case anybody didn't see that massive 2-hour video, which I understand. If you want to understand history and the end times, you have to understand what's going on in Israel. Those are God's chosen people. It says here, I mean, I could give you verse after verse after verse, but this is really clear. Psalm 135:4. For the Lord hath chosen Jacob, Israel, unto himself, and Israel for his peculiar treasure. God's focus for history, for I would say most things, is Israel. If you want to understand the heart of God, if you want to understand how God is working through history, you have to look at Israel. And I could go on about this, but I'm trying to keep this short, so let's keep going. All right, so let me give you a quick timeline thing here of what the end time events are going to look like. Right now, we're in the present church age. We're in the church age right now, the time of the Gentiles. That is soon going to end with the rapture of the church. Now, before the rapture of the church, again, there's no signs that can happen at any time. There's no forewarning of that. We're to be ready at any time. After that, the battle of Gog and Magog happens, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today. Then after the battle of Gog and Magog, the tribulation begins with a peace treaty signed with the Antichrist. Okay, 1 second. I've got another interruption. Sorry, guys. All right. Sorry, back. Okay, so we're in the present church age. The battle of Gog and Magog is going to happen, I believe, relatively soon, and I believe we'll talk about that in just a second. Then the tribulation begins, with the signing of the peace treaty with the Antichrist, and honestly, for the first 3.5 years, that's going to be fairly benign, fairly peaceful for Israel. The rest of the world. The rest of the world is going to be having troubles. There's going to be earthquakes, things like that going on. But it's at the midpoint of the tribulation where the desecration of the temple, the third temple, which I talked about in the previous video, is going to happen. And that's when Israel really comes into the Great Tribulation, and that's when they really start turning back to Jesus Christ. After that, we have the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. And at some point, I need to talk about the difference between the return of Jesus Christ and the rapture of the church. We're not going to go into all that today, but there's two separate, I see them as two parts of one event, the day of the Lord. But I'm not going to go into all that for now. Then we have the 1,000 millennial reign of Christ. After that, we have the final judgment, and then we go into the eternal state. Okay, so for now, though, we're concentrating on this point here. This is where we're at, I believe, at the end of the church age, where the rapture of the church is going to soon happen, Lord willing, and then the battle of Gog and Magog happens, and then we see the tribulation. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Now, do you recognize these three guys? On the right, you have Putin, of course, of Russia. Then you have Erdogan, if I'm pronouncing that right, President Erdogan of Turkey. And then you have the Ayatollah Khomeini from Iran. Although I understand he may be sick and his son may be taking over. Second son, if I heard it right, is going to be taking over. Okay, but the main point here is these three are going to play a pivotal role in the battle of Gog and Magog, along with other nations like Sudan, I believe Syria, and a few others, Ethiopia, if I remember right. But the main characters, the main three of this alliance is Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Okay, I just went through that. We should see, and if we're close to the battle of Gog and Magog, like I believe, then we should see an alliance between these three countries. And we absolutely do see this. This is in Ezekiel 38 and actually 39. Okay, really quickly. Now, you should be familiar with the battle of Gog and Magog. For the Mongolian sake, I went through this in a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go through much here because I want to keep things short. But basically, in the battle of Gog and Magog, Iran, Russia, from the north, and Turkey also from the north, and other nations, Ethiopia, Sudan, some other African nations, are going to attack Israel. At that point, there is no hope for Israel in human. America isn't helping Israel at that point. Okay, they have no hope, and these people come down like a swarm. There's just overwhelming numbers, overwhelming technologies coming at Israel. They have no hope. They know this is it. We're done. Finally, Iran has finally been able to destroy us, is what they're thinking. At that point, God miraculously intervenes for Israel, destroys all these armies, and Israel. At that point, Israel sees, oh, the God of the Old Testament is real, and many of them believe that. But they're going to see, like the Old Testament, coming out of Egypt, the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. They're going to see the God there. What they see is the God of the Old Testament. We see it as God of the universe, God of the Old Testament and the New Testament. But they're going to see the God of their Old Testament, their scriptures, working directly in their history. Sorry, one second. William's coming back in. Sorry about this, guys. And that's why I believe that this happens after the rapture of the church age, very quickly. Right now, we live by faith, not by sight. We're not seeing Old Testament type miracles going on. Even Acts. In Acts, you did see a lot of miracles going on, but that kind of went out. I mean, Paul, there was at least 3 and maybe 4, if I remember right, people that at the end of his life, Paul couldn't heal. Timothy had stomach problems. There was another guy that was sick unto death, and Paul just couldn't heal him. The miracles of the early church, I believe, were to get the engine, as it were, started. You have a solenoid in a motor, and that's a small little piece, and that kicks on really strongly, and that turns your motor over and gets the engine started. Once the engine's started, you no longer need the solenoid to do anything, and that kind of just sits there until you want to start it again. But I believe miracles for the early church were just that. They were there to get the early church kick-started. And once it was going, then those miracles petered off, in my opinion. Now, I believe miracles can happen. They probably are happening in some parts of the world, especially where the Bible isn't prominent, maybe in Muslim countries and some other, North Korea and some other countries, or dreams and visions and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I believe where people have the Word of God readily available, we don't see Old Testament miracles. Quite frankly, I've never seen one. I don't think anybody who would be listening to this has ever seen one either. We pray. We do see, miracles in our lives through prayer and that kind of thing, but not, arms growing back or these, parting of the Red Sea, that kind of thing. But after the rapture of the church, there are going to be Old Testament type miracles, parting the Red Sea. The prophets are going to be calling down fire from the sky. It's just going to be a crazy time. But that's not the time we're in now, and that's why I believe the Battle of Gog and Magog begins kind of like a reassertment of the Old Testament type miracles, and it's no longer, not by faith, not by sight. It's by sight, and then by faith also, because there's going to be a lot of false prophets, weird things going on that's going to also pull men's attention away and their beliefs away. But excuse me, but we're going to see. So, and the focus is again going to be on Israel. Right now, the focus is on the church, the Great Commission, that kind of thing. Whereas with the Battle of Gog and Magog after the rapture, the focus again comes back on to Israel. Israel is again raised up, and they become the witnesses throughout the world for the gospel, not the church like we have today. Okay, that's in short. All right, so we'll see a miraculous saving. Israel will see that, and they'll turn back to their Old Testament God. They'll reinstitute the Old Testament sacrifices. They'll start building the third temple. Excuse me. I talked about that in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into that here. And all of these countries, or at least most of them, are part of an alliance. And we're seeing this alliance being built, but especially Turkey, Russia, and Iran are together. We've seen this let me see, verse, the picture I showed earlier. Sorry. Okay, so I just went through that. Now, this is all written 2,600 years ago in Ezekiel, when they, the place was called Persia. Russia wasn't even really a country. It was just just a smattering of warring tribes. Turkey was, it was just, all these countries didn't exist, but God showed Ezekiel what would happen, and it's absolutely happening in the world today. It's absolutely happening in the news today. I mean, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a week or so ago that Sudan also kind of joined this alliance. These countries are coming together. So, what's going on in the world today was written 2,600 years ago, and one of my main points was the Bible isn't just some religious book. It's a history book. It's why a history book, and it shows past history and what will happen in history. That's why a lot of it's boring. I mean, how many people go around reading history books? You know, they're kind of boring if you're not into that kind of thing. I personally am, but that's why a lot of people find the Bible kind of boring because it's just going through past history. It's going through the different laws and rules and that kind of thing. All right, let's keep going. Before this, now this is an important point, very important point. In fact, this is the key point actually. Before this battle, the battle of Gog and Magog, the nation of Israel will be in a place of peace and safety. Okay, Ezekiel 38, 8 and 9, and also in 11 and 14, it talks about this. After many days, thou shalt be visited. Now, he's talking to the Russian president, I believe. It's either Gog or Magog. I forget. One of them is the country, one of them is the man. I forget which one is which. So, anyways, in the latter years, so we know this is end times, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people, Israel, against the mountains of Israel. Okay, that's Israel being gathered back in the land, 1948, which have been always waste. Okay, and up until 1948 and beyond that, I mean, the place was just a wasteland. Mark Twain went there back in the late 1800s and said, there's just nothing here. There's like some goats and herders that way. It was just a wasteland until Israel was brought, until 1948, and they brought the land back to life. But is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. In Ezekiel 11 and 14, it reiterates this. Israel, before the battle of Gog and Magog, is living in a state of safety and security. And then thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Okay, William's going to keep going. All right. Okay, so this is the key to understanding what's going on right now is Israel's living in a state of safety. Now, this hasn't happened until now. And I put this verse in here, but you know what? I'm going to skip through this because even at the end times, they're going to say peace and safety, and then sudden destruction will come upon them. Sorry, one second. William is... All right, sorry about that. What was I saying? Before the tribulation, we think of everything going crazy, but there's actually a time of peace going on. And what does everybody believe? And I believe that Trump is going to bring in a time of peace around the world, and especially for Israel. Okay, now this hasn't happened yet for the nation of Israel, but I truly believe it will happen under President Trump. Now, really quickly, I'm going to give the brief synopsis of what's going on here. Up until now, from 1948 until really what we see in Israel is one long protracted war. The Arabs especially do not see these as individual wars like we understand them in the West. The Arabs see this as one protracted war, and what we call wars, the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, the war that's going on now, those are different battles going on in one long war. Okay, and up till now, Israel has not lived in a state of security and safety. What's been going on lately is Iran, who has vowed to destroy Israel, what they set up, they've been setting up for 30 years or more, with Hezbollah especially and with Hamas, is a proxy war. And what they want is kind of a buffer between them and Israel, and a way to attack Israel without them being directly involved. And they've used Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. There's some other guys, I believe, in Syria. I forgot their names. But that's not working anymore. Okay, October 7th, after October 7th, 2023, they came in, killed 1,200 people, took 120 some hostages. Israel at that point woke up as a nation and said, okay, up until now, we've kind of been not keeping them back, pushing them back. If they come in and attack us, yes, we've had wars, but then we've ceded back land for peace. We've tried to give up land for peace, and that is just not working. No, we cannot live with our neighbors constantly shooting rockets at us, coming in, digging tunnels, terror tunnels, killing our citizens. It's just no longer. October 7th was a wake-up call for Israel. It was the worst Holocaust since the Holocaust for Israel, and it just woke them up as a nation. That was a catalyst, I believe, for these end-time events. So they went in, they've destroyed Hamas at this point. Hamas had just been kicked out of Qatar because of Trump. They're in the process of destroying Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah really, it's had its head cut off. Right now, there's just a few more people trying to fight back, but Hezbollah's finished. Iran knows this. Iran has been knocked back so hard. Their proxy army, their whole strategy for the reason has just been destroyed in the last year. And so now Iran, and recently Israel went in. Iran sent over a couple different rocket barrages. Israel went in and they actually hit some of their nuclear sites, and they've hit different places saying, we can knock you out if we want. You better stand back. And so Iran has been knocked back now to the point where they're thinking, okay, our proxy war isn't going to happen. We need larger nation states like Russia, Turkey, in order to really destroy Israel. As they still, the leadership of Iran, at least, is not giving up on this idea of destroying Israel. They have to reevaluate because their whole strategy was destroyed in the last year. So now what they're doing is they've pulled back and they're strengthening that Gog-Magog alliance with Iran, Turkey, and Sudan, some Ethiopia, and these other things. They can no longer do that. Okay, President Trump is very pro-Israel. Now, remember, we're talking about a peace for Israel. So at this point, what I believe is going to happen is President Trump is going to allow, up until now, Biden's been holding Israel back. He's given some weapons, that kind of thing. He's allowed them to kind of punch back. But really, everything Israel's done, it's been in, I can't think of the word, in opposition of the Biden administration. If the Biden administration had its way, Israel would have sent some rockets, would have hit back a little bit and then pulled back and just continued this 76 year of, just push back, but don't destroy. But Israel said, no, we've got to go and destroy. But Biden's been kind of pulling on their shirts. And Sunday I was saying, how do you fight a war with somebody fight somebody? You're trying to fight somebody that's trying to kill you. But then you got some dude in the back, big, strong dude in the back, pulling back, not allowing you to fight. Trump, especially since Iran recently tried to have Trump killed, because Iran knows what's the story. They're not stupid. I believe chess was invented in Iran some thousands of years ago. These guys are tactical. They know what's going on around the world, and they understand Trump is no friend of theirs. They're a friend of Israel. And so Iran recently tried to have Trump assassinated, which Trump knows, and you could guarantee Trump is now, if he was already in the Israel corner at that point, and maybe he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, the Abraham Accords, that kind of thing, but now he is absolutely directly in Israel's corner, especially after Iran wanted to kill him. And now, and now Iran knows their days are numbered as far as Israel is concerned. They're going to pull back, like I just said. He's going to allow Israel to do what they need to do. They're going to completely destroy Hezbollah. Hamas is destroyed, but they're probably going to go to Turkey. Now the Hamas leadership is now in Turkey, but I wouldn't be surprised if Israel takes some of them out. I'm not going to go into all that, but the main point being is that Trump is going to allow Israel to take the gloves off and do what they need to do. And the Abraham Accords, which were created during his first term but weren't ratified, in fact, the whole Hamas thing started most likely because Iran was trying to stop those accords with Saudi Arabia. I forgot what other Arab nations are involved. But these Abraham Accords are kind of a peace deal, almost like the Antichrist, but I'm not going to go there, with the surrounding Arab nations with Israel. And they were created. Everybody was happy with them. They were about to be ratified. Then Iran came in and kind of with this whole Hamas thing and everything just stopped. But I truly believe that once Trump gets in, he's going to ratify these Abraham Accords, and Iran's going to be knocked back so far, and they're going to be scared of Trump. They're going to be scared of Israel. They're going, like I said, going to be strengthening that Gog-Magog alliance. And we're going to see peace not only in the rest of the world, but mainly for our purposes here in Israel is going to see a time of peace like they've never seen before, like we see before the Gog and Magog. Okay, and I went over this. Iran's hopes of destroying Israel aren't going to change. They're just going to go about it in a different way, and that with the Gog-Magog alliance, which I talked about. Okay, so we are absolutely living in biblical times. What was written in the Bible 2,600 years ago is absolutely happening in the news today. I can't emphasize that enough, and that's not just in this particular subject. I mean, it is absolutely in other subjects as well. We're saying with the CBDCs, we're saying with the financial system, the political systems, the religious systems, everything is just coming to pass, which absolutely leads me to believe that we are in the end times. I can't say, okay, I talked about this before, so I'm not going to go over it again. Time is short. We need to open our eyes. We need to get to work for the God's kingdom is what I was challenging them. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. With all thy getting, get understanding. Basically, Christians shouldn't be walking around with their eyes closed to all this stuff. We should be looking around at the news, at what's going on with Trump. We should understand how Trump works into Bible prophecy, which is what I'm trying to do here now. We should have wisdom that other people can't see. Again, all these facts aren't disputed by unbelievers or anybody. What is disputed or what isn't understood by unbelievers is how this ties into Bible prophecy. Okay. And Romans 13, 11 through 12. Sorry, William's coming in one more time. Sorry about that. Okay, we're almost done. Romans 13, 11 through 12. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to wake out of sleep. For now is our salvation, the hope of Christians is the rapture, nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. In other words, get ready. Things are happening now so quickly. I mean, some days you think, not quickly enough, but, time goes by fast, and things are just changing so quickly, and especially with this Trump election. I see absolutely a clear path to the peace and security before the Gog and Magog war. And think about it. What if Trump is actually a Christian, which I don't know. He says he is. I don't know. That does at this moment. But if he's raptured out and millions of other Christians are raptured out throughout the world, that's going to allow Russia, Iran, and right now America's stopping them from really coming in and attacking Israel. But if Israel, because of if America, because of the rapture, is just thrown into chaos, maybe the leadership is almost gone from the rapture. Millions of Christians are gone from the rapture. America's no longer there to protect Israel. And they say, oh, here's our time. Let's go. And they go in and the Gog and Magog happens, etc. And away it goes. I can see that absolutely clearly at this point. Okay. And so I don't know if the Lord will come back today or tomorrow. I can't say a year from now or 10 years from now. But when I look around what's going on in the world, I see many end-time prophetic events converging together, which I talked about before, which tells me that we are getting very close to the Lord's return. And the question I left with the church is, are you ready to meet God? When God asks you, what have you done with your talents that he's given you? What are you going to tell him? And then I went on to challenge him. What are you doing? Can you visit a hospital? Can you pray? If you can pray. If you can give. If you can visit a sick person in the hospital, do that. We want to do something for the Lord before he comes. First John 2:28. Now little children, abide in him, that when he shall appear, we may have confidence and not be ashamed before him at his coming. Things are coming close. I mean, this is nothing new. I've been harping on this topic of Trump for years. Even before the election, I can say, thankfully, I think God's going to put Trump in there. I mean, I wasn't confident that the Democrats or the, the deep state, as they say, wasn't going to somehow rig the election, because no, I'm not going to get into all that, but I think most people on the Republican side of things, or on the Trump side of things, we're worried about that. And that's why they say too big to rig, and it was. And I believe God allowed that to come to pass. And now, and I said before, if Trump gets elected, I see an absolute clear path to what we see in the Gog-Magog scenario, where Israel's living in a state of peace and security. And actually, I believe the whole world as well, but I want to study that a little bit further. All right. Hopefully this isn't too long. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and I hope this audio is a little bit better on this time, and we'll call that a wrap.